Hello everyone, we are live yet again, and this will be my author's chat of the week, and I think I'm going to start off with a cough. I apologize, I have a tickle in my throat. There we go. Anywho, as always, I'm going to keep my eye out for my co-host so I can invite her in when I see her. But yeah, I haven't been doing lives lately. I've been out and about getting married. So I just got back last night and trying to catch up with all things. How's everybody's weeks going? I always like to start off by asking some of the basic questions. What are you reading right now, being one of them? Let's see, and as I keep my eye out for my co-host, I was just chatting with her and see if she can figure out how to go live. I don't know if she's ever done a live before or not, so it's always takes a few minutes to get things going. But yeah, I was actually going through some edits I received from my editor for the 9th novella of my Dark Viking fantasy series, The Guardian Speaker. So that's exciting for me because that means in the not too distant future, at least for my art group, they'll start receiving some copies, and I'll be gearing up to release that book before too much longer, which is, I feel like between releases, this has been a very long gap, but there have been reasons for that fact. But yes, it's been kind of a longer gap than I would have liked. But that's kind of the way it goes sometimes, and it's okay, as long as it all works out well. And thankfully it looks like the edits that I received are very minute, so it shouldn't take me that long to go through the whole novella and start getting ready for formatting, which is a whole other animal. If any of you are authors, you understand that that side of things, because formatting actually does really matter. Okay, let's see. I see her. Let's see. Hello.
No,
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm so excited we got to do this, and it's working out perfectly. And yeah, well, welcome and thank you for meeting with me this week.
Hey, I've been looking forward to it. This is a new
Yay!
way to do lives.
Of
I
course.
haven't
Okay.
done it.
And kind of just so you know, I keep these usually fairly casual. I don't know if you've ever listened to any of my live chats before, but I usually just turn it over to you to start off with. You introduce yourself and what you write and what you read, and we'll go from there.
Sounds good. I'm R.R. Carter. I write fantasy. The only books I have released now are fantasy. I'm actually dipping into quite a few other genres. I read everything. If it's a word, I probably dig it and I'm going to read it.
I love it. And you said you only write fantasies at the moment. So how many stories, books, and all that do you have out and available for people at this time?
I have two out and available right now. I
Yes.
have Born
Show
on
the
Here
covers.
and Blood and Water. Those are the two that are out now. Hopefully, I should have one, but it's not in my fantasy series. I have a standalone in a completely other genre that I'm trying to get out by the end of the year.
Yay! That's exciting. That is so exciting. And as a fantasy author myself, I always love seeing other authors and what they choose to put on your covers. And you look like you feature fantasy creatures. So can you tell us a little bit about your series so far and why you have it look like a dragon and was it a chimera on the other one? I was trying to peek and see.
It's a
Yeah,
manticore.
Manticore. Okay, there we go. I love it. The wings and the tail.
All of
Fantastic.
my, not all of my, but a lot of my characters are actually shifters, and they can shift into manticores, dragons, valkyries, uh, and werewolves. That's the other big myth they can turn into. It's a series about the magic hidden in our world and the people that were kind of tasked and called to use it and why. It's kind of like a hidden battle that's been going on throughout humanity where certain people were selected way back in the day from every corner and pocket of humanity that was in the globe in 400 BC. And families were brought from everywhere to take on this power so that they could defeat. I'm
Another
trying
form.
not to give away all of book one in my
Okay, okay,
description.
okay, okay. There is some kind of antagonistic entity out there.
Yeah,
There we go.
and they're
Sometimes
pretty
vague is
cool.
better.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you about the littler ones. The whispers are pretty cool. they're these creatures that just eke life out of things. Like if you touch it, it literally just makes you like slowly decay and die. Not slowly at all. You decay and die, and then they can actually mimic people to perfection. Like they look like people, animals, anything that they steal the life from, they can then take on that persona as long as they exist. Uh, and the only people that can I see them and identify them as anything what they are the myths, the people that were imbued with the magic to be able to see them.
Wow. Okay, yeah, that would be actually a terrifying kind of creature to come across or entity to come across that can absorb your essence and then all of a sudden pass, themselves along as you.
Yeah, exactly. In the first book, my MC actually sees one of his deceased parents, and
Ooh.
it like triggers a bunch of stuff. But
Hmm.
they do a great job of it. And if you can't see them in person, like technology completely blankets it. If it's a picture or a video or something like that, you're not seeing the person and they can't see the essence of the difference. So if they see a picture of someone they know is dead, like, or a video of them walking down the street today, they're like, wait a second, that can't be.
That is that kind of like doppelganger kind of idea where
Yeah,
you're like, but you're not who I think you are you? Can't
exactly. I love a doppelganger. I'm all about that.
Sorry, I had a little phone call ringing in. Apologize. But yeah, no, I love that. I love that. So what inspired like you to select the particular myths that you chose? Because you mentioned Valkyrie, you obviously you were talking about werewolves, which is very European, and so where did your love of all these myths come from?
I have a huge love of mythology in general, any kind of mythology, Norse, Celtic. You can go to pretty much any pocket of existence, and I want to know about the things that go bump in the night there. Like, I want to know. So when I went into it, dragons were a jump or were an automatic because I'm obsessed with dragons. Hardcore obsessed. Like, I have dragons literally all over the walls in my house, flying around, put up
Fantastic.
everywhere. So that was the first one that was like, that's got to be there. I love a good werewolf tale, and if you look into them, you can find variations of werewolves kind of everywhere. They'll have different names and slightly different mythologies and meanings,
Mhm.
but that's a good one to cover a few bases. Manticores were
Oh,
just
yeah.
because I never see manticores, and I wanted one. And then
I like that.
Valkyries,
I like that. Yeah,
Valkyries
I
just
wrote.
badass babes.
Of course. Of course. But yeah, manticores are funny because yeah, like you said, you don't see a lot of them. And in one of my series, I was writing manticores into them just because they were kind of a creature that people don't usually think of, at least not initially when it comes to mythos. They usually think of other entities like maybe Gorgons and Medusa versus Manticore or something like that. But no,
Absolutely. I love all of them. Give me any kind of creature and I'm down with it.
I absolutely love that. No, I'm definitely the way I write my fantasy is I do pull a lot from various mythologies from all around the world, and I I think I have as much fun doing the research sometimes behind that as I do writing it.
Yes, yes. I'll get on tangents where I'm like, I swear I've worked 12 hours today, but I have not written a word. But I can tell you some stuff about people from 6,000 years ago that probably isn't even true at this point. It goes so far down that you're like, I think I came out the other side and
Yep.
things aren't the way they started.
No, I love that. So, how much research do you put in your books? Because again, a lot of people don't. Yeah, well, I assume that there's a number of people out there that don't realize how much research goes behind fantasy.
So much, so much, uh, so much. For Born of Fire, I had to do deep dives into a lot of cultures and pockets of humanity and actually look at these maps from 2,000 years ago and see where they found villages and or signs of life and things like that. And I didn't want it to come from one place. I wanted it to be everywhere. So I had to
Mhm.
go through and find where there's enough people to do it. And then you got to look into languages and then you got to look into the types of names they would have then if you're going to base it in
Mhm.
this world. And then so on and so forth to kind of really cool degrees. I got to learn a lot about Egyptian culture. I got to learn a lot about Egypt is fascinating and it
Oh,
is
it
not
is.
what you think. there's so many differences that we don't realize because like school doesn't teach us that kind of stuff. They're not deep diving into other people's
Yeah, they
histories.
do.
They're kind of glossing over it. So then when you get to, you're like, oh my God, you guys are so cool.
Yep.
I
Oh
love
yeah,
it.
no. I actually at one point wanted to be an Egyptologist, and that's why I have a life-size sarcophagus of Tutankhamun in my living room because was a little obsessed in a while, but that was one of the first mythologies that I fell in love with, and I have like encyclopedias of like the top 600 gods of Egypt because there are a lot of them.
That is so cool. There are so many of them. There are so
Yeah.
many. I was trying to not name my original character anything that was any one of the gods or kings or anything, and I
Mhm.
was like, nope, there's too many. We're gonna step on one of them. We just gotta go
Yep.
with it at some point. That's
So
that's
so
so cool.
what is your MC's name?
Well, the MC now is 2,000 years later, and she's actually from here, so she's Delilah.
Okay.
Her great great grandfather, the beginning of the witch line, was Raotep.
Ooh, I like that.
And
I
his
do.
son, I had to do a whole, because if I make one character, I got to start adding everybody that they know and everything to it. And I got to
Mhm.
go through and do a lot of the names, and his is the only one I can remember because we continually reference it in the books. So it's the only one that sticks, and I don't want to butcher them because that's just embarrassing for me.
No, I get that. I understand. Like for me, I my most complicated series I'm working on is my young adult portal fantasy. So it's a magical multiverse, and I just am finishing up with the fifth book, first draft of the fifth book. But by that point, I have such a large cast that I have to keep this pretty detailed chart
Yeah.
of all the characters, all their names, pronunciations, quirks, and everything. Because if I'm 4 or 5 books in and I'm referring to an obscure character historically, from book one, this is getting ridiculously long. But it's important to keep track of those little details. It makes your
It is.
universe that much more real and vibrant.
It does. And readers know that stuff. Like, it's taking us years to put this out, but a lot of times they're going to read it in like a couple months. They're going to clock it like that. They
Mhm.
know. They know. I'm the
Yep. Or
same way I have. Go for it.
oh yeah, sorry. Continue.
I'm the same way. I have just folders and folders of character traits, who was born when, who was born where, everybody's relations, family trees, powers, abilities, all that.
Mhm.
It's fun though. I
It
love
is
that
fun.
part.
It is fun. It may kind of, I like to think of it as like when you're trying to catch a serial killer and you have like all like the strings and like the people and you see those kind of like spreadsheets, their walls dedicated to trying to track down this person. I feel like that's how my office looks like at any given day because I have so many sketches and notes and things tethering up characters and people probably walk in and be like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "I promise, I'm just writing my fantasy."
I swear, this is what happy looks like.
It does. It does. So let me ask,
Absolutely.
for your series, what are the subgenres or subgenre that falls into?
Um, I don't know. I'm so terrible at classifying
It's
these books because they're such a pain. Definitely it's new adult, it's fantasy. Technically, I think it could go into paranormal. I've had a few people call it urban fantasy, but it doesn't take place in cities. So I try and not put that because people get big mad if they're expecting a city fantasy and you're like, well, they live in a hole in the mountain. So
yes.
it's kind of fun in that aspect. Dark. The second one gets dark. That one's very got anti-hero things and
I love
pretty
that.
much mythology, new adult. No, definitely not sci-fi. I don't know.
Hey, things can overlap, and that's the thing is people have to realize there are overlaps in a lot of things, and that's why there are like all these new subcategories and subcategories coming out because there are just thousands of ways to describe a book, and I can like pick any one of mine and run down a list of like 13 plus categories that all are true, but just mean different things.
Yep. It's hard because a lot of people will judge a category completely different than the next person for the same category. I've
Mm-hmm.
had people tell me that sci fantasy isn't a thing. They're like, it's either sci-fi or it's fantasy. And I'm like, Anne McCaffrey.
Yep.
Is she sci-fi or is she fantasy? Because she's both.
Mm-hmm.
It is a thing, but people have their opinions, and it's kind of what guides us all into choosing books. So I try not to be like, I don't think that's correct, because that's correct in their world for their way they're looking at it. To them, that's the way it works.
Yeah, and
But
like for me, for the Portal Fantasy series, I mean, I do use terminology like portals and gate wormholes and stuff like that, but I'm not dealing with spaceships by any means. We're literally in worlds where you're battling with magical weapons and dealing with, like dragons in case of point and stuff like that. So I feel like falls in fantasy with some undercurrents and undertones of sci-fi. But
yeah,
it could be whatever you want it to be, because guess what? You're an author and you could write what you want.
that's my take on it. I'm pretty. If you read it, I don't care what you want to call it. It's a
Yep,
dragon book. It's a Manticore book. It's got some witchy stuff in it.
I like it. I love it all. But then again, I love pretty much if you tell me that there's a mythological entity in something, I'm like, yes, give me that book. I want to know more.
Same. I was on a live on Romantasy Reads a couple weeks ago with author T.L. Combs, and she was
Mhm.
explaining her book, and it sold me. She's like, well, I've got these dire wolves and they can communicate telepathically. And I was like, downloading it the second we're done here. You got me. And it's on my Kindle now.
I love it. I love it. But like, and that's the thing is like, when it comes to marketing books, I feel like at least for me, I know I get into, I hate to say call them ruts, but I get into the same thing where I'm always pitching the books the same way. But there are so many ways to pitch a book that, if you try a new way, you might catch someone else's attention because they're like, oh, dire wolves with
Yeah.
telepathic abilities. Now that's interesting that you might not have thought of when you're describing some of the other aspects of whatever that book was. But yeah.
Yeah. Marketing is just the
Uh,
giantest of pains. I am so
how
glad.
is it going for you, marketing?
It's not going great. I figure I reach people fairly regularly. I kind of just be myself and hope that people will find it. And I put videos out and I try and do like different tags because exactly what you say, you don't want to fall into that rut of being like it's forever and ignoring every other aspect of it. But it's so hard not to. And usually when I'm thinking too in depthly with marketing, I'm like, oh my God, and a whole conversation will hit me and I gotta go write it down or I'm gonna lose it. And it's a whole dialogue between characters and then it strikes writing almost every time. Marketing seems to inspire writing in me, but not marketing.
Yeah. Yes, I like that. I like that. Yeah. Trying to come up with like you said, interesting tags is always fun and a challenge because at least for me, I don't want to misinform someone the wrong way or give them the wrong impression. For instance, I don't write with heavy romance. I'm an action forward, I'm adventure forward, that's what pulls the story along. And not to say there aren't undertones or romance going on, but it's not a romance based book. None of mine are at this point. So
Yeah.
if I tag something like, well, there is kind of a love triangle going along, I don't want people to be like, yes, we're doing a romantic scene. I'm like, no, it's not that. I'm so sorry. Should I use that tag? Should I not? I mean, it's true, but it's not to what the extent people think. So,
Yeah, that's really hard. That's the same thing with mine. This series has no spice. There's no real romantic. There are because they're full-fledged characters. Like
yeah,
they're gonna have
exactly.
relationships and that's going to be a part of it. But it's not focused on that. And it's
Mhm.
hard to be like there's not that in there because there kind of is, but
Yeah,
there's
exactly.
not. It's about a bunch of people trying to figure out how to be heroes when they didn't know that it was anywhere near what they thought it was. And generally a bunch of really young people trying to do it, like young adults trying to figure it out, or new
Hmm.
adults. It is not YA. I'm very big on that because there's some dark stuff in it. It's dark subject matter, and I'm like, I'm not going to put that in YA just because I'm not catching that crap. There's torture and stuff in it, and I'm like, I don't know what parents want their kids to read. You decide that. But if I put it in adult, nobody can be mad at me about torture scenes.
Yeah, and that's the thing is I think that's why, I mean, I know there are still people who don't realize that new adult is a thing, but I'm a person who's a proponent for if you have a new adult book, don't be afraid to market it that way because, you can have a younger cast of characters, but they're dealing with some real hard life topics that, again, someone who's, what you're saying, a parent may not want a younger side of young adult to read that kind of stuff because young adult starts at 13.
Yeah, and some stuff like there's bad scenes in it. They're dealing with the literal worst of humanity. Like it's not all happy times. The first book left everybody so happy, and then the second book they were like, "Oh my God, that's so dark.
Why did you
You
go
thought
there?
you were nice." I'm like, "I am nice." They're getting character growth.
It's just a very dark way.
It can't
Oh,
be
no,
nice
I
to
understand
everybody.
that.
Nobody will read it.
Yeah, no, because my first series, hello, hello, my first series, The Incarnate Saga, is my new adult one, and it's a dark shifter series. It's darker because it is a war-based series, but the first book could qualify as YA because it reads like a YA, it's very easy to read, approachable, everything, but the rest of the series gets darker. And because of that, I was like, it is a new adult series. Even, I know people argue with me the first book, they're like, it could be, but I'm like, but you haven't read the others. I'm not comfortable marketing the rest of the series YA. So I'm keeping in my comfort zone with that particular
That
thing.
is exactly what I went through with Born of Fire. I had some people that were like, no, it is YA. And I was like, you can totally think that. That's 110% fine. But I know where this series goes. And I
Mhm.
just can't do that. I can't. And I think it's, everybody has such varied opinions on YA, and it used to be like a set genre. Originally, it started as a marketing thing. That's what it
Yeah.
all was so bookstores could be like, between the little kids and the adults, we need something. We need a slot for them. And so it was like a marketing thing, and then it has just evolved and evolved and evolved, and now it's a marketing thing and a genre and a trope and everything. And it's like,
Mhm.
I'm that's a lot of landmines. I'm not stepping on none of them. New adult popped in and I was like, that seems right. That
That's
seems
right.
like
That's the way we go. No, I love that. But no, I absolutely, and that's why it's just to educate readers that there are a variety of things. So if you want a certain vibe, it's out there. You just have to find the terminology for it so you know what to search, and it'll be there. And if it's not there, it's going to be there soon.
yeah,
Make it a thing.
there's not a thing on this world that you could want to read about that someone hasn't wrote. I would bet a lot of money on that.
Hmm. Well, it's kind of like one of the newest subgenres that's been cropping up and people are really all about is the cozy fantasy. Because not to say people haven't been writing cozy fantasy for a long time, but it has been now termed and giving here's the definition and here's what it is. And everybody now is like, oh, I do like that. That's what I want in my life. And are moving toward that.
Yeah.
So, both with writers and readers. I have not dabbled in cozy. I am still more the epic sweeping action forward, we're taking you to places side of fantasy, but I do have some on my TBR list that I'm going to finally read my first true official cozy fantasy before too long.
Which one are you starting with?
I am starting with, oh my gosh, you asked me the one that kind of put the name on the board. I'm like, I have my
Like
physical TBR
what?
here, but it's all turned against me, so I can't see the spine. What did you say?
Uh, Legends and
Yes,
Lattes?
that one. Yes, that one's the one I'm going to start. But I have now been able to, through these kind of chats, talk with a number of other authors that have been putting out cozy fantasies that seem to be pulling a lot of attention, which is fantastic. So I have to continuously grow my TBR.
Yeah. Oh
Never
man,
catch up
books
with
are terrible. I tell my husband, I'm like, I'm going to leave this earth sad no matter what because
it. Yep.
I'm gonna have so many unread books. There's no way I can get through them all. Like it's
Yep.
just not physically possible. That's gonna be the reason I turn into a ghost. I'm
There you
gonna go
go.
haunt the library if they
Like,
still
well, I
exist.
mean, the library ghost from Ghostbusters is one of those. All she wanted was peace and quiet. Just let her have peace and quiet. And put the books back on the shelves. Oh my goodness. No, that's true. It's like, and as an author, my counter to that is I feel like I will hopefully. It could change. Hopefully, always have more stories to tell than I'm capable in my lifetime. And the sad thing is, at some point, it's gonna life's gonna catch up. But but I hope to always have a story in the wings, which is a good thing or a bad thing, if you depending on your perspective. But
I'm all for good thing. I think that's great. I have a whole file that I'm like, I'm not going to be able to write them all, and I'm still adding to them like every other day. I'm for that. It's such a fun thing to do. You don't realize how fun it is when you're just reading before you actually start making the books, and you're like, I get to do all the things that I've wanted to do in every book. Every time that I thought it should have gone this way, I get to make it go that whole way. And it's just this weird power trip, I guess.
yeah. Well,
I like
I
it.
want to verify you are indie, or are you hybrid, or are you public? Fan?
Indie.
Okay, that's what I thought. Because when you're talking about like having the control, and that is something I do like. I am a control freak. Is having the control over my babies, my book babies.
That was a big deal. Like I started querying, I think I sent out like maybe 10 queries and then I found self-publishing and I was like, wait a second, I can keep all the control? Screw this querying stuff. That's just going to break my heart in the long run anyways. I'm going to keep all the control and do it my way.
Yeah,
And man, that is an expensive thought process.
definitely is an expensive thought process. We all hope it pays
Worth it.
back in the end, but I mean, there is such joy to know the quality of your product and have that control. And down the line, if there are errors that crop up, because there's always going to be a spelling error, grammatical error that slips through, professionally done in all different facets, again, tried to indie, it's going to happen. And the fact that we can then go back in and be like, quick edit.
I'm just going to go back to this formatting software and tweak that 1 second. I love that. I love all of it. The indie thing is so hard, but it feels almost more rewarding because every step you take, you're like, I did that. I did that. That wasn't somebody else jumping in and helping. That was fully me. And that's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
So how did you find your cover designer, or did you design your covers yourself? Because some people do. I'm not one
I
of those, but that's why I had to ask.
I wish I had that kind of talent, but that talent belongs to someone else. I
Fair.
looked and looked for cover artists and I couldn't find one that I wanted. Originally, I was trying to follow the path where it's you spend very minimally on cover and spend very minimally on editing and everything along the way. And the whole time that's happening, my husband's in the background, like, just do it the way you want to do it. Why are you going to sit around and have to do that in 2 years? Just do it now. And somehow that led me to thinking I can go look at these incredibly talented artists' covers and not need one. I can just look at them and feel inspired. That didn't happen. I got on ArtStation and I found Jeff Brown and I was like, dear, I want all of those covers. It's the shade and light. He's got depth and you get to watch him do it. If you work with him, you actually watch him paint out the original sketch, do it all on live on a Zoom call. And it's like, it's very cool and it's such a hybrid with the way people can now digitally do art and digitally paint and do all this. And there's no way I had that kind of talent. That would take me 10 years, 10, 15, probably way more to get anywhere near that. And I just can't. I found him and I'm happy with that.
Yeah. And that's the thing is like you can like I'm actually my when I'm not writing fantasy, I'm a pet portraiture artist, and so I do art, but the type of art I do would not be correct for the genres that I market in. So just because even I can claim I have an artistic talent, but it's still different than these, and so that's why it's nice to find people who that is their niche, this is what they do, and can make it, come alive in the way that does your book justice.
Yeah, and it's so I love a fantasy cover. Like I'm sitting here staring at yours the whole time in the background. I'm like, I do love it. I love your gradient of colors. I love the way it's going from each one to the next. That's so
Yeah.
cool. But
Thank you.
I
Yeah, I'm
love
a big, bold color person. I've noticed, even in like the darkest ones, just because, when you look at the novellas really close, they have a vibrant color pop on each of them. And, but yeah, I love bold colors right now. Maybe one day I'll tone them down.
I like the colors. I'm a big fan. That's why I love fantasy covers so much is most of the time there's so much happening with color and light and shadow, and I dig it.
Mhm.
Even a lot of times you can buy a fantasy book, and even if you read it and you hate it, it's gorgeous. You bought that artwork and it still gets to sit there and you still get to look at it and be happy. So like, even if the story wasn't for you, that cover is dope and you're happy with it at the end of the day. I love that about fantasy, especially the creatures and the portal ones. Like you said, yours is portal. Those ones can be really, really cool.
Oh yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm literally staring at them.
Zoom in. But yeah, no, this was, and just, I always recommend this to any author who has yet to discover it. The inversing your book covers to create some kind of backboard when you do lives. It has saved my life and saved my video thing for this platform just because it makes it easy. I don't have to remember to
Yeah,
flip things backwards. But
I
absolutely.
I got some canvases for my birthday. That's what my husband got me was big canvases of it.
Ooh.
And the first thing I did was pick them, put them up, and I'm holding the camera in front of it, and I was like, "Man, babe, I think we need to buy some inverted ones because I can't read it, but they're so pretty that I want the regular ones in my living room still." So
Oh yeah.
I'm currently figuring out that because I think that's just a brilliant idea. Brilliant. Not one I thought of before I needed it, but
Yeah, but it's like
could
when
still
someone said
be
that, it's like, oh, that's such an easy thing to do. At least on the author side, it's just like just an easy thing to do. And so that's why I do Vanna White now. I'm like, so these books here, blah blah blah. You know what
but
this is
that's
for.
awesome. That's a clever thing with all of them like that too. I like
No, thank
that.
you. Yeah, and
Is that
you know,
dragon behind you?
as you grow your series, you can continue to change them and feature different ones and all that kind of fun stuff. So it's really
Yeah.
fun. But yeah, so let me ask, where, because you're indie, where do you sell your books? I always want to make sure everybody knows where people can find your stuff. So where do you sell through? Where can people find your fantastic
Amazon.
novel?
I haven't gone wide yet. I won't go wide until the end of the series, until
Okay.
all the books are published and I've run my time up with KU. I have really mixed feelings on KU because of their vast history of really hurting indie authors. But I
Yeah.
did put my book in there to start, and now I feel like I owe it to anybody that started it there to be able to finish the series there. I feel like if I put it in there, I shouldn't take it from people at that point. So I'm kind of stuck there through the end of the series, and then I'm going to go wide and everywhere. And hopefully do a whole nother series of covers too, so that I can do a box collection.
Oh, I love that. I absolutely love that. But yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm right now exclusive through Zon at the moment, but I, you know, with the debate of especially like the payout right now going on with KU, my debate is should I move all those wide? And even with my prints right now, they're exclusive through Zon or direct because I do sell authors signed copies too. But I think next year my goal is to move the print versions wide so people can buy them, you know, that, and then I can still have a little bit of time to debate about the ebook stuff.
It's, I've heard from so many people, and I've had really good opportunity to talk to people that are so much farther ahead in this game than I am. And I got a lot of feedback that was like, if you're going with this series, finish the series up before you go wide. He said it's going to be a pain for you with every book of the series to do it, and realistically, 90% of your sales are going to come from the Zon anyways, so you want to kind of do it that way. And I honestly can't tell you one way or the other. I've had a few people, not many. I've had more authors tell me that going wide hurt them retrospectively than it would have been to stay narrow with Amazon. Who was just saying something? Rebecca Thorne was just doing a video about
Yeah.
that. She took one of hers wide and she was like, that hurt me. That hurt me pretty bad, and I'm already back in it. So
And I
it's,
think it may depend also where your majority of sales come through. Because originally the majority of my sales were through KU. And so I was like, I'm never going to leave because 75% plus comes
yeah.
through this route. Meanwhile, one of my friends on here, Jason Duro, he says that ever since joining this platform, most of his sales are print. And so he was like, well, why stay in there? So if I could go wide and still make all my print sales the way I'm doing it. So I think it just is a case by case. You have to judge what's best for you. And the plus side, like you're saying, Rebecca Thorne, is you can try go from one to another. Dedicate
Yeah.
yourself to whatever time you signed up for. You have to be fair, play fair. But then if you don't like it, switch back.
Yeah. And I grapple with that so often, especially with the way Amazon tends to do. It's a constant thing in my head where I'm like, I just feel like maybe it'd do better if I went wide. I just also know that's going to be a ton of work on top of a ton of work.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's why I think for me, again, I always say like the order of events I want to do, then something else crops up and I start a new project and everything gets like thrown all in a loop. But theoretically, prints go wide next year, and then that's like you said, a lot of effort. You have to get the new cover design and
Mm,
reformatting to the new specs and all that kind of stuff, and it's more money you put in. But
absolutely.
and see, because again, there's no guarantee that's going to help at all. But who knows? It would also be kind of cool just to see some of my books on like bookshelves, like actual bookshelves, like Barnes and Noble, which is the one thing
Yeah.
I wish I had that capability right now. But going exclusively to Zon, I don't have. That
Yep.
would be kind of cool.
Yeah. I see indies every so often that go into like a Barnes and Noble and they're like, there's my book. And I'm like,
I know.
it's the dream. And then,
I
I'm
know.
happy for him. So it's like, that's freaking awesome. But could you give me a play by play on how you did that?
Exactly. Exactly. And I've been like dabbling new things. And the nice thing about being on this community, there's so many authors that you can ask and be like, hey, you've done this. I'm trying to do this. Can you give me some advice? And they will, whatever this is. For me, that was trying to do a Kickstarter at the beginning of the year. I, got a lot of advice from other authors. And they're like, here's some good tips of what to do. Here's some things to try not to do. And that does help out. So I love being in
It
this
does.
community.
It's an awesome community for that reason. It really is. If you use it wisely, and that sounds
Mhm.
like some magic totem, but like legit, if you use it wisely, this community can be incredible for you on so many different levels. I've
Mhm.
learned a lot from people mm, on so many levels, from like one thing to the next, and a lot in niches that I didn't think of beforehand, like the artists, the cover artists, the stuff that they actually deal with, and voice actors and audiobook narrators
Mhm.
and things like that. And you're like, man, that is so much different than I thought it was. And it's so cool to get to hear people that do it and know it tell you about it. So you're like, okay, I really like the firsthand knowledge. That's very cool. Thank you. I love that about this community and how varied it is. There are so many voices. You get so much knowledge here
Oh yeah.
and other stuff, of course, but
And
it's
I'm a
cool.
person that I have to say, it's a flaw. I hate asking for help. I really do. It's like I'm trying to be better about that, but I'm like, I will figure it out on my own kind of thing. And then I
Yep.
look at all these other authors who, when they ask for help, there's so many people giving them advice, maybe so much advice that is overwhelming. But I'm just like, oh, I should just ask questions more often.
I've gotten good at asking my readers questions on here. And that's still, I'm the same way. I'm like, I shouldn't be bothering people with it. I should just go figure it out on my own and not take these people's time.
Hmm.
That's my thing is I'm like, I don't want to be a bother. And also, I'm going to have to figure it out the next time anyways, because I'm going to forget it between now and then. But it would be nice if asking for help was something that was easy, but I feel you on that 110%. That's like an obstacle course.
Oh
I'll
yeah.
learn I'll learn something that takes way too much time generally before getting the nerve to be like, "Excuse me, can I have some help?"
Please, sir, may I have some more? Yes.
Yeah,
Can I have some help? No, I totally get that. I totally get that. Now, but yeah, going double backing a little bit, you were mentioning obviously you're on KU, so you have ebooks and you showed paperbacks. Do you have books in hardcover? Do you have audio? Have you considered doing those? Where are
I
you in
have
that whole?
hardcover. I have hardcover for all my books. My book artist is part of his packaging is you get covers for every possible platform. I have audiobook covers, hardcovers, soft covers, ebook covers, promotional banners, all the stuff. And I have almost all of them except audiobooks. I don't have audiobooks yet. And I'm trying to work on them, but I want I want artists that are going to take like a good chunk of money to work with. I'd really like to not to figure out, I'd like to save up and hire Travis Baldry to do Born a Fire for the male perspective.
Ooh.
And then there is Ruthie here on TikTok, and she's perfect. I want her to narrate the second one with Chloe and Delilah so bad. So it's just kind of a game of figuring out how much that's actually going to cost because it's going to be a good amount, and then saving and going through all of that. Because I've heard people say that when they do them and they do like the cut percentage thing, I've had authors tell me they don't even make a dime on each audiobook that they sell. And that sounds rough. That sounds rough. I'm a big fan of just paying it out front and then not having to pay anymore.
And
So,
yeah, there are pros and cons of all the routes to do it. I'm doing a little bit of everything with all my series because I'm just trying to see what route is best for me. But I do have one where I split the proceeds, but my books are on the larger side. So we're working with a larger kitty because they cost more, so people are paying more for them, and that means you have a larger percentage to then divvy up. So that's a pro and con. But if you're doing something that's a smaller book, I can see that splitting, a few bucks is going to be like
yeah.
nothing. So it
And
just depends, I think, also the word count of your book, the
I
thickness.
would agree with that, though. I would agree with that. That makes perfect sense because one of them is going to be small. Born of Fire is 230 pages. It's very, very short. It's just meant to jump you into the series and walk you through the world building without having to actually walk you through the world building because I just throw a character into it. I'm like, this is the world. You got to figure it out, buddy. And
Yep.
everybody gets to go along for the ride. So that one's pretty short. I think that one will only probably cost maybe 5,000. I don't know. It's rough to tell because I've had people tell me crazy numbers, and then I've had other people tell me that they get them done for like a couple $100s, and I don't know how they do that.
Yeah,
I've
I
been
don't know
trying to
how to do
figure it
that,
out,
but
but it evades me. I'm not to the point where I can figure that stuff out yet, I guess. You can
and
do
again,
this in audio.
yeah, each narrator or each narration group has a different kind of budget they set for like what they'll accept. So, you can get someone that's on the cheaper side, but the cheaper side is still not cheap. The more affordable side, I should say. Maybe that's the word, the more affordable side, but still cost a lot of money. And then you have narrators that go up and up and up. And
Yep.
it's why it's one of the last man standing for a lot of authors, especially indie authors, because it's a financial thing.
It is. It is. But it's also so cool. And as someone who consumes audiobooks as much as I do, because I read all platforms pretty much all the time, I have at least one of every one going constantly. I so understand the almost need to get them to audio because it's huge now. It's taking over, not taking over, I'd say, but it's taking a big chunk out of general book readers. There's a lot of people that I found that can't read regular books at all anymore for visual reasons and things of that nature. And I'm like, man, I really want to be able to share with everybody. But this audiobook thing, I so admire the people that figure it out so quickly. And I see so many of them jump on here and they're like, first book out, ebook, audio, hardcover,
Was
available
not that way.
everywhere. And I'm like, how did you do that? How did
hmm Yeah, no, it took me a long time. My first book was published in 2016, and then it was only um last year, around this time last year, that my first audiobook came out. And so it took a while for me to make that jump and figure things out. And I can't claim that I've done it all perfectly, but at least I'm doing it.
yeah,
Getting done.
that's awesome. Have you been enjoying that? Has that been a hard road to navigate going into audio?
Um,
Any
well,
particular
I think
hurdle?
I think my whole process is always stumbling more than I walk through but that's not a bad thing. And I see a comment popping up saying audiobooks, audiobook only because brain can't sit still enough to read words. I understand there are people who, who are totally active, who are like, the only times they can sit and read is when they're behind the wheel of the car and they put, are listening to something rather than the radio. And so I totally get that. But yeah, for me, the process, that's why I'm playing. I have 3 series that are, 2 of them are being released still simultaneously, and one's already complete, but trying different things to see what I like going forward. So I have 2 that I'm paying all, full out male narrator, female narrator, a whole voice cast with sound effects, and trying just a little bit of everything. And some narrators like George, he's very quick, he turns things around respectively at a decent pace. And then my voice cast, being between COVID and trying to get a voice narrator
Oh,
for each character and all that stuff, that's been years to get the first one out. And so it's time and dedication, all that. So it's, I won't say it's been super bumpy, but it's definitely a learning curve. It's definitely a learning curve to figure out what I like.
I could see that being a thing. That's wild. That's so cool that you're gonna have the whole cast of characters. That's so freaking cool. I love that. Was it very
Yeah.
hard to find your voices?
This particular group, most of them are part of this collective, and then every so often, if I wanted someone with a particular kind of accent that didn't just work with one of their actors, um, they kind of found someone who fit in with what I was kind of envisioning, who wasn't exactly part of their group, but they kind of knew, so they pulled in other people. But it was kind of a fun process trying to pair up voices or switch people around or try to get the right accents. And we're finally at the stage where I got an email a couple weeks ago saying, due to obviously copyright and all that kind of stuff, they just decided instead of paying for the rights to use other sound like music, they're going to find people to design brand new music for the audiobook. So
Oh,
we're at that stage. So I don't know what that means length of time wise to do, but I'm like, you know what? I waited long enough on that one. We'll just continue it on.
yeah,
That was not a
really.
fast turnaround time, but thankfully they're only 4 books.
See, that right there is why I'm like, I'm gonna study audiobooks for like 2, 3 years before I jump into this. I feel like I need to study this like I studied self-publishing before I jump in. I have, did you know that Kate Reading and Michael Kramer take indie author projects? I did not.
Ooh.
I would assume though that most would if they're paid up front. I imagine it depends on how they're paid, especially if it's a very large audio narrator. I have no knowledge in this field at all, so anything I'm saying is just guesses.
It just depends on the voice actor because, and I'll get to your comment in just a moment, Jason, but depends on the voice actor because George Blagden, who does my Viking series, he's a TV actor, he's a movie actor. Again, he does audiobooks for, trad publishing and all the way down to indie, but that's what he's chosen to do. There are definitely probably some that only do traditional publishing or only have a, deal with a particular, you know, route or whatever. But yeah, there are definitely also some big name actors that are open and willing to
Yeah,
support the little
and
person.
they
Love
get
them.
up there in price. I seen
Yep.
one that was quoted at 20K, and I was like, I'm don't even know when I would be able to do something like that. Maybe never
Not
in my whole life.
now. Not
That's a
now.
lot. Yeah, that's like some very successful future Ruby might be able to do something like that.
Yes, that is dream money. That is the dream money to spend. But I feel like you can find fantastic narrators that are respectably budget, the
Yeah,
nice, decent range too.
absolutely.
But, you just have to decide as an author what you want to do. And I had a comment pop up a moment ago. Yeah, talking about Barnes& Noble. Now, this is a good comment in general because Jason was saying, and thank you, we're looking for my books at Barnes& Noble, but because there are 2 ways to route as an indie author. There's going wide, which when you're wide, depending on who you distribute to, you can distribute your books to Barnes& Noble. But both of us at this moment are not wide. We're exclusive through Zon. And the reason being is at this moment, at least for me, Zon pays out far better than any other particular group. So
Yeah.
they give us a far larger cut of sales. Now, with that said, I mentioned a little earlier on today that I'm hoping that next year I will take my print versions and go wide. So you may actually find my books then at some point next year in Barnes and Noble. But it's a money game for the little person, and we try to grab every penny counts when you only make sometimes pennies.
Yeah. That's I had the other day, I had a really great day. I had like ebook sale, a physical sale, and 1,000 page reads in one day. And I showed my husband and I was like, "Oh my God, what is this?" And he was like, "That's good, huh?" I was like, "Yeah, any day that's not flat zero is such a good day."
Yes,
Any
and
day.
oh yeah, and trends change, and I've been dabbling with ads, and sometimes I've had it work. Right now I'm in a lull because algorithms and again everything changes. But when I had it working, and I had it working for a couple months toward the end of last year, I was like, oh, oh, this feels nice. Okay, this is what it feels like when you're selling decent amount every day, and then I'm back to like the slump, and I'm like, okay, I need to pay the bills.
Yep. But at
Gotta
least
find
by that point, you're like, I've been here before. I know I can come right back on out of it.
Yeah, yeah. It just takes a little bit of work, but I guess that's the whole thing is we try lots of different things. Which reminds me, where can people follow and find you outside of obviously you're here on this platform, but do you have a website? What other socials, if any, are you on? Do you have a newsletter? Let's talk about that part.
I do not have a newsletter. I think I technically had one started. I don't think anybody but maybe my aunt ever signed up for it, and I never pushed it because I'm an awkward human that doesn't know what to say to people outside of fantastical stories. So I haven't been doing that. I do have a website. I have Facebook. I have all the socials pretty much, and they are in my little thing under my face where you can find me. That apparently we're not allowed to say any of those things. I'm pretty much
Why?
everywhere.
You can say
Also,
why.
but also pretty much just here
Yeah.
because I I'm not a fan of most other social media platforms. Facebook is just memes for me. I pretty much just go and look there and get just right down that rabbit hole.
Yep.
Uh, yeah, pretty much I'm everywhere, but if you want to find me, it's website here or my email, which is also in my thing. Those are the best ways to get a hold of me.
And I hear that a lot. I hear a lot of authors, and either they, so far, everybody seems to really like this particular platform. But with that said, yeah, just depending on you and your taste and your vibe, some people are really good at Twitter, and I can't figure out Twitter for the life of me. Other people are really good at other places and enjoy some of the other, like the beauty shots and the polish sometimes that Instagram has. But I'm like you. I'm a little bit everywhere. I'm getting better about time management, including this is my favorite thing now, and I am not ashamed to let you know that I'll take the videos I make on this and repurpose them on most of my other social media. Twitter's not a video thing, but like the other ones, since I have a rotation and I rotate, so many days after I create them here, it'll pop up on Instagram. So many other days afterwards, it'll pop up on my Facebook group. And so many days afterwards, it'll pop up on my Facebook page. But it allows me to use those reels, which help get new people. I can't say
Yes.
sales, but get new people.
Sometimes I remember to do that. The only way I ever post on those are videos that I have cannibalized from here and taken everywhere else because that's just the way I do it too. But I always forget I'm terrible about it. I'm just awful about it. They
it
just slip my mind.
It's for me, it's like I'm a person like I have to live by scheduling everything and also routines. So if I get on a routine, I'm like, okay, this is the day of the week where I set up all the auto posts for the next week and have it going, and I'm like, now do your thing. Populate. Be amazing.
I need to get
Be
good at the auto posts. Ooh, don't start the stutter now. We've done so good. I need to
amazing.
get better at those because I can't figure those out to save my life. I know that you can do it here if you switch to a business account, but I don't
Did
know what
not
that
know that,
entails.
and I have a business account, so I need to check that.
I
That would
almost
help
feel
me.
like
I
you
got married
should
this weekend, and I had to like pause, be like, time out, guys. I need to do a post for algorithm's sake. And
I must
Pre-made
not
them.
lose my spot here,
They
so
were pre-made posts.
nuptials on hold.
Yes, yes, yes. But no, that's I need to figure that one out. Now I have to new research for another day. Next week. Something for next week.
I have a comment here that says Canva auto post, and
Ooh.
I don't know if you're comfortable with your name, so I'm just gonna call you BD. BD said she was permanently banned from Twitter. She's not mad about it. That's funny. But also, hubby asked about how much it is for audiobooks. It varies from person to person and book to book and word count to word count and narrator to narrator and whether or not you need a producer on it and whether or not you're going to go full blown with the theatrics and the sounds, and it is, there's no price anybody will give you that's a straight up price.
Yes.
It's
Now
random, I swear.
that is very true. And I know, at least if you go through, like, I go through Audible. Well, my Audible goes through Zahn's, the background of that, which is called ACX, and they do have
Yep.
a standard minimum fee that they require, um, just so they know narrators get paid that minimum fee, which is, I think it's 250 an hour, what they call per finished hour. So an hour of
Yeah.
finalized listening, that is 250, and that's their minimum that they require. Now there's loopholes, and there are people who don't ask for that. There are plenty that ask more per finished hour, and again, there's the calculation like your book said, and there are, depending on how skilled you are, some authors narrate their own work. That saves you from paying someone else. I am not that person. I do not know sound effects. I don't know how to do that. I will not do that. There are some that do the split share or split. I
Profit?
lost the train of thought of the word what I'm looking for, but your income that you get off the sales, you split your share with the narrator you signed up with for 7 years, but you don't pay them outright, which means for people who can't afford them, that's a pro of that is you're
Yeah.
not out of pocket from the get-go. Downside is theoretically, if someone
Volume
came and
features.
wants to
Thank
pick
you.
you up and sign you and you're interested in that route, they may be disinclined if they hear you have a split share because you're financially entangled with someone else that they don't
Yeah.
have control over. So pros and cons of everything. And again, for me, I'm just dabbling in various ways, seeing how it works.
That's valid though. You'll figure stuff out that way. You will figure it out one way or another. And if you kind of dabble in it, then you get to know what you do and do not like. I think that's really cool. I'd be very interesting if you make a series on that. Tag the hell out of me in it because I will be very interested in hearing about it. Because I'd love to know your experiences on it.
The pros and cons of audiobook through me. That's the thing. I
I
never
watch
feel
it.
confident enough to recommend things to be like, this is my series. Other authors are really confident. They're like, here's where I am, but they'll be honest about the pros and cons too. But I just, for whatever reason, that is something I don't feel a lot of confidence of being like, here's what I've done. Because if someone repeats it verbatim and it's just like, it doesn't work for them, I'll be like, I'm so sorry, whatever. It just,
I totally get that. I'm I'm all about sharing anything I've learned, but I'm also telling people this is the way I do it. Everybody does it differently. Find a way that works and fits true to you because there's every chance in the world you're going to do it completely differently than I do, and that's 1000% fine because that's your way. I'm pretty big on making sure, but also I got so much help from people that were just like, this is the way I did it. You don't have to do it this way, but it kind of worked for me. And I look at all these different methods and find one that worked. So I just pay it forward, I guess. I'm just paying it forward from the people that did it for me.
I love it. I love it. Well, maybe I'll consider this. I'll consider that. I can't promise I'll do them, but consider a tell-all behind the scenes of ACX because that's what I've worked with is ACX again, and there are downsides that I've discovered afterwards of going through ACX as platform exclusively because then Zon still has your source material unless you go wide. For audio, which I didn't realize that was a thing until after the first thing I signed. But again, you're
Oh,
learning, and that's why you learn along the way.
And you
And you
can
know,
take a wide later. It's a little more complicated if you didn't plan for it in advance.
that's Amazon likes their contracts. They like
They
their contracts. And they're
and
good
then
with
they waive
them.
the
And
pretty pennies. Like I said, pennies, but they waive their pennies.
yeah, exactly.
Well, since we're rounding the end of the hour, I always want to make sure I ask, is there any topics that we didn't cover that you wanted to cover? Any information that you wanted to talk about yourself, your work that we never did so far?
Nah, I pretty much just came to hang out and talk to you about books.
I love books. I do have one more question because I know you mentioned you were trying to do a standalone before the end of the year, correct?
Yes. Or
Okay.
it might split up into a duology because I can't help myself with anything. But yeah, I'm actually branching into it's actually a romantic thriller. It is
Ooh.
completely off the trails of the fantasy, but the idea popped up. My husband and I talk about all bookish things, including book talk. And one of the things that we do is if he thinks of something funny that he think would be a funny, spicy book title, he'll tell me. And he's like, that's going to be on there. And he thought of one and he was like, no, but that sounds good though, right? And I was like, it
Yeah.
legitimately does. And he kind of ran through a thought process and I was like, I can write that. I'm writing that now. And that just started the whole thing.
Well, good. Then I have the perfect kind of question. So, have you considered doing a pen name, or are you going to keep your name? Because I know you're doing now two totally different genres. So, have you decided that route? Because some people keep their name for all of it, and then others
Yeah,
will pen name
I am
everything.
so torn on it. I am so torn on it. On the one hand, I almost want to go with my name just because it's clear and concise, but it's so different that I want to keep the separation that a pen name will enable me by keeping the fan bases separate or at least not leading one into another. Like if you go into my fantasy book, you aren't expecting a romantic thriller. And I feel like so I'm really torn. I am leaning towards doing a pen name so that all the genres that I write in kind of have their own names and associations so I can group them all together because I also have a horror book that I'm working on and that really doesn't fall in either of them either. Yeah, I have a Dean Koontz meets Stephen King kind of book going that I'm
I
really
like
excited
it.
about.
I like
I
it, and I love it.
I
So
can't
no,
stay in one room to save my life.
oh no. And that's the thing. Like, I right now, all my work falls under the general broad category of epic fantasy, but they do deviate a lot with it, which makes it a little complicated when I'm marketing because, again, readers of kind of the more quest-based YA may not be the same readers who want the kind of grim, dark fantasy style of my adult Norse mythos. So, it makes it a little complicated, but yeah, I've said this repeatedly. If I did branch outside of epic fantasy, I would probably definitely give a pen name some real hard thought because that it's hard. It's hard. You want to be fair, just do justice to your readers and their expectations, but you also
Exactly.
will definitely have readers who doesn't matter what you write, they're gonna still read your stuff. They want to read it all.
I love that because I'm one of those people. I'm one of those people that's like, if I like your writing in one thing, I will probably like it in everything. And if I see your name, I'll just keep picking it up every single time.
Mhm.
And I hope that I have that. And I know you don't get that in all readers, but it's just, I don't want to burn readers. I never want to piss my readers off. Like you see people go and do things that I'm like, you're an author. You can't do that. You got to be nice to them. We love them.
We love them. We cherish them. You know.
Yes. I just I have great respect for my readers and I really don't want to piss them off or lead them down the wrong route. I don't want them to think one thing and get another.
Yeah.
Like
And
Windows
that's
Sandman. Yeah.
yeah. And that's something that like if I get the question of like because I have different series, I get a question that's been cropping up more and more of reading order, and I'm like, well, I don't really have a reading order outside. You start with the first book of the respective series because they're so different. They're not, in the same universe or multiverse. They're all in their own separate kind of, independently separate realities. But I kind of been wanting to create or design a chart to put on my website and just be like, here are the different breakdowns. Find the one that best fits your personality. Boop.
That's so cool. That's so cool. You
I have
should.
no idea how this is going to work, but that's just a thought.
Fair, fair. That sounds like about 80% of my plans where I'm like, I'm going to do this. No idea how to.
Yep. Yep. It's got to start somewhere. First is the idea, and then go from there.
I mean, you got whole series of books behind you. I 100% have faith that you'll figure that out and it'll look cool. That sounds so cool. I love that.
But I think that's fun is like each author comes up with their creative, unique little twist on what it means to be an author and what they offer. And like this past year, my goal has been finding new ways of monetization. So beyond the book, yes, I've been offering signed copies for a while, but now I'm coming up with ideas of like book boxes because that's trendy, coming up with like how to make that work. And I used to do origami years ago, and I stumbled across a cute little, it just fell on I think my Pinterest, and it was like, how to do an origami dragon. Well, I was in the process of writing books, work in progress book with a lot of dragons. I was like, a book box, and I put a little origami dragon in it. And then I was like, okay, and I started Googling one other kind of like fun origami things. And so right before I logged on, I was mass producing origami dragons.
I
Like
love
put them
that.
in my little pile of all the little doodads that I have to offer for people if they ever do like book boxes or stuff like that. I'll be like, here's your origami dragon, home folded by the author.
I love that though. That's so cool. And readers do seem to like that. I did a bunch of stuff. I did a book box all the wrong way. I didn't make any money on it. I did it for PR and then I did PR wrong. Well, technically wrong. I really like the way I did it. I just did it for people that are already a fan of this series for book two. Because I was like, you already love it. You deserve the bookish stuff. So that's what I
Aww.
did. And I did things like my glowing Newman that
Ooh.
actually glows if I have a. That took
Ooh.
me a hot minute to figure out how to do it. It glows if I hold it there for a long time, but it takes a second. But I'm with you on that. I love to see all the little things where authors get so hyper focused on something that they want to do, and everybody has their own little ideas and their own little innovations and turns to it. Origami dragons sound hard as hell. My daughter can do origami, and she was like, "You just do this," and I was like, "Can't do that. I don't understand how your fingers work that way."
Well, it kind of becomes muscle memory. After you do the pattern, it's a pattern. And it's like, once you repeat the pattern a few times, and you're like, okay, it becomes easier and easier. Now, you can get some very complicated ones, but I'm starting with ones that are not that complicated. Maybe down the line, I'll upgrade my dragon skills, dragon folding skills.
A dragon sounds like such a complicated fold.
Wait, let me
I
see.
think you're undercutting yourself.
I don't know if you're going to be able to see him, but he has like a little dragon.
You cannot tell me that wasn't complicated. I'm like,
Like I
that
said,
was
I used to do
5
origami,
steps.
so it's not that. Huh?
I said,
So
that looks like it's no less than 75 steps.
far less than you think, but that's okay. I want people to think I spent 2 years on this dragon, which is not true. Because, anywho, but the fun stuff. I love the nerding part with other authors and just the fun stuff, the little things.
Yeah, that's the fun of it all. I love people that haven't lost the magic in it yet, that are still just enjoying all of the little nuances of it. I
Oh
love
yeah,
that. I rip up the
absolutely.
paper halfway through a crane. I gave up. That's
Aww.
me. That's me. I'm with you.
It's again. It's like anything. It's practice makes perfect.
That is
Be
very
it
true.
origami or editing, practice makes perfect.
Editing, oh, every author's bane, I think.
Yep. Yep.
That's been a fun one to learn. Do you take any editing classes?
No. Some of it is practice, in the sense of going through edits after all the years with working with the same kind of editors that I've been very blessed that the editors I worked with, they're very good about trying to educate me on the errors that I make repetitively, so then hopefully I don't make them again. Now, I can't say that I retain that as well as I should, but because I've done this for a number of years, it's getting better and better. And the bigger errors are going smaller and smaller, which is nice. Trending in the right direction.
That's awesome. I like editing. I still don't think I'm very particularly good at it, but I
Mhm.
like taking the classes and kind of learning. I'm a big learner. If it's something to learn, like I want it. And editing is so weird to me. It That sounds bad, but it is. It's such a weird mix of like hard rules and complete art, and it's
Mhm.
so different than writing. So I'm very fascinated by the people that can just do it really well and have put all the years in. I was also very lucky to have an editor that did the same thing for me, that walked me through and was like, "You're going to see me flag this 600 times in your novel. This is why. This is how we fix it. This is what you need to look for in the future." And then the next book you write, you're like, "Oh, I do that so often."
I need to stop. What is
Yeah.
wrong with me?
You start
But
writing and you're like, "How did you even read this?"
yeah, yeah. And well, this may be something you're familiar with or not, I don't know. But one of the things that got me once, and it had this very specific example on that case, but now I use it to kind of just think about how I choose words for writing, is writing my Viking series. I was, because the term is the edge of the boat is called your gunwale. And so I was talking about, them leaning over the gunwale and all that, but then my editor was like, no, no, no. I know that is the actual term for it, but you have to come up with something else because guns are not invented. So you can't call it a gun whale because guns aren't invented historically. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh, and so that has like, the way I approach, especially since I write kind of though they're different worlds, they're also set more or less in different times too. So I have to be very cautious as would someone know this word, even though it may be the correct word, but would they utilize that kind of a word?
Yep. And it can pull readers out if you do. If you Little things like that are the ones that you, exactly like you said, you don't think of and an editor shows you, but readers catch that. Like everything, any flaw you have in that book, the readers are going to see right out the gates. So I'm always telling people, like, my biggest advice is eyes on your work. Before you
Oh yeah.
publish it, eyes on your work, because you're not going to see a bunch of it, and a lot of people might not, but the more you get, the more we're going to catch them
Oh yeah.
every step of the way. I would have never thought of that though.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was called a gun whale though. That's information to me. I'd never heard that.
Yeah.
I would have definitely gone with side of the boat.
Which is, I think, what I had to revert to, because I was like, I could not find the historical term of what people during the Viking era would have called that aspect of a boat after doing all this research on longships. And I was like, it's a sign, the boat sign. This is what you get, guys. I'm
And
downgrading my
then
verbiage.
exactly. And then depending on what you go into, like a lot of the Viking lore, that specifically is a rough one to write in because they didn't have the most history that you can actually get a hold of hard facts and hard things. There's only a smaller amount, especially when you look at other societies where they documented every little thing essentially. Then you go into histories like that, and everything was verbal for so long. It was mostly a spoken history that you lose words, you lose titles, you lose understandings. So that's got to be very, very difficult, especially to write the whole series in that. I did one prologue from like way back in the day, and that was hard.
Yeah.
That was hard. I can't
But
imagine the time that it takes to write a whole series in it.
But part of it, kind of like you said, if you like learning, and for me, that's an aspect. I like ancient history, and so I find it fun to do the research and obsess about all the documentaries and all the books that come out and all the updated, because now Google algorithms like, oh, you like Vikings. Every time there's a discovery of a new sword, it pops up. It's like, look, they found a new sword. I'm like, yay! But 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 it has taken a lot of years building up that knowledge base. On the other hand, it's fun. If it wasn't fun, I don't think I would have chosen this project.
Yeah, very true. Very true.
Yep. Well, we have rounded and actually surpassed the hour. And yes, and I see the comment saying, I want to stay in the immersion. So yes, you don't want to get kicked out of the story because of a faux pas, a little flaw.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But yeah, so thank you so much for coming and joining with me for this last hour and quarter. And yeah, if you ever want to do another one of these, I schedule them weekly. And sometimes twice a week. To sit down and chat and talk books and fantasy and weird little quirks that writers have. And
I'm about that. I'm all for talking quirks because that's all I got.
I love it. Well, thank you again, and we will keep in touch. And I will be, just so you know, repurposing this on my YouTube channel in a few weeks, and I'll put all your context live links below so people can find your work.
Awesome. Hi, YouTube, for the
Thank you
future.
for the roses, buddy. Yay, roses! I love roses. Okay, everyone, thank you for staying and chiming in, and until next time, we'll see you. Bye.
Bye.